There's a strange shift that happens when you stop chasing approval. It's subtle, almost invisible at first, but the moment you stop needing to be chosen, people begin to wonder why, not just out of curiosity, but out of discomfort. Because in a world addicted to validation, the one who doesn't seek it becomes magnetic. Think about it. We're surrounded by noise. People posting, reacting, proving, trying to be seen.
So, when you pull back, when you detach from the need to explain yourself or please everyone, you create space. And people are drawn to that space, not because you're louder, but because you're not. Carl Jung often emphasized individuation, the path to becoming whole, not by adding more, but by shedding the false layers. When you become unattainable, it's not about playing games or pretending you don't care. It's about standing so firmly in your own presence, in your own energy, that people begin to feel something they didn't even realize they were missing: depth, stillness, self-possession. And that's when everything starts to change. The moment you stop trying to be available for everyone, the right people start paying attention. But this isn't just a social strategy. It's a psychological trigger buried deep in how humans perceive value. We're hardwired to respond to what feels rare. And when someone no longer gives their energy away carelessly, when their presence comes with boundaries, clarity, and intention, people take notice. Why? Because most people are overexposed, always accessible, always responding. But the person who withdraws without explaining, who doesn't broadcast their life, and who moves in silence, holds a different kind of power. Carl Jung believed that the persona, the mask we wear to survive social life, is a necessary illusion. But when you begin to dissolve that mask and operate from your authentic self, people either become uncomfortable or deeply intrigued. There's no in between. You'll notice people begin to project onto you. Some will admire you, others will resent your distance, but all of them will feel something. And that's the paradox. You become more impactful by doing less. You stop chasing, you stop explaining, and instead of being someone who's easy to reach, you become someone they have to reach within themselves to understand. That's when you stop being entertainment and start becoming unforgettable. When you become less accessible, people begin to question their own value in your life, and that's where everything shifts. Suddenly, your silence becomes louder than their words. Your absence becomes a mirror, and what they see in that mirror isn't always pretty. Because the truth is, most people aren't used to someone who doesn't seek validation, who doesn't need to explain themselves, who doesn't react. We live in a time where attention is currency. Everyone's shouting, posting, replying, reacting, trying to stay relevant. But the rarest individual is the one who's simply not trying. They're calm, they're quiet, and because of that, they're powerful. Their energy doesn't rush to fill empty conversations or mend shallow connections. It's preserved, directed, and when they do show up, it means something. This throws people off, not because you've changed, but because you've stopped performing. You're no longer trying to be liked. You're no longer negotiating your worth. And the moment you stop proving yourself is the moment people are forced to sit with what you've already shown them. That makes people uncomfortable, not because you're distant, but because you're not giving them the usual emotional comfort they're used to feeding on. And here's what really catches them off guard. You're not angry. You're not cold. You're not bitter. You're just fine without them. That kind of detachment carries a silence that roars. It's not passive. It's intentional. It tells the world, I choose where my energy goes. And that kind of clarity, it's magnetic. When people sense they can't just have you, they start wondering if they ever really knew you. That's when your presence becomes heavy, meaningful, desired, not because you try to be any of those things, but because you finally stop trying altogether. There's a point where you stop needing to be seen, and that's when you become the most noticeable. People don't realize how much of their behavior is shaped by their need to be validated. They speak louder, dress bolder, post more, explain themselves constantly, not because they're expressing truth, but because they're hoping someone out there will echo back, you matter. And when you remove yourself from that system, not with bitterness, but with quiet certainty, you become something different, not invisible, but unplaceable. You become a question mark in a world full of periods. Someone whose presence doesn't demand attention, but effortlessly commands it. And the reason it's so powerful is because it's not about playing games. It's about reclaiming yourself. The world expects you to be easily moved, easily triggered, easily available. So when you're not, you disrupt people's patterns. They don't know what to do with someone who isn't looking for approval, who's not trying to fix, explain, or chase. You become still. And in that stillness, others are forced to confront their own noise. This is where something unexpected starts to happen. The same people who once took you for granted begin to overthink everything they say to you. They reread old messages. They notice every delay in your response. They sense that something's changed, but they can't quite name it. That's the moment you've stopped being just another person in their life. You've become a mirror for their own insecurity. And the paradox? You didn't do anything to cause this. You just withdrew. You stopped pouring into empty cups. You stepped away without the dramatic goodbye. No scene, no closure, just silence. People don't know how to process that. Most are used to loud exits, emotional finales, chaos. But when you remove yourself with grace and detachment, it lingers. It haunts them because it forces a question. Why didn't they chase me? Why were they okay with letting me go? That discomfort can echo for years. And while they're stuck in confusion, you've already moved on. Not to spite them, but to return to yourself. That's the power of becoming unattainable. It's not about making others miss you. It's about no longer needing to be missed. When someone senses you've detached, their mind doesn't process it as peace. It processes it as a threat. That's because psychologically, humans are wired for pattern recognition. The brain finds comfort in predictability. It wants to know what comes next, what to expect, how someone will react. But when you step out of that rhythm, when you no longer respond, explain, or react like you used to, it short-circuits that expectation. And suddenly, you're not just someone they knew. You're an unresolved pattern. And unresolved patterns demand attention. This is where the power of being unattainable becomes real. Because the less you try to explain yourself, the more people begin to explain you to themselves. They create stories, they analyze, they guess, they rewind conversations, trying to find the moment they lost access to you. And what they don't realize is that their obsession isn't even about you anymore. It's about them. It's about their need to understand why the game they were playing stopped. In relationships, romantic, platonic, even professional, there's often an unconscious agreement. You give me attention, and I give you access. But the moment that access is no longer granted, the brain registers it as a loss. And the kicker? It doesn't matter whether they treated you well or not. The loss still stings. Not because they valued you properly, but because they assumed you'd always be there. Carl Jung once touched on this idea indirectly. When someone projects onto you, they're not seeing you at all. They're interacting with their own unmet needs, their own shadows. So when you become unattainable, it forces them to meet themselves. And for some people, that's terrifying because you represented a distraction from their emptiness. And now that you're gone, all they're left with is the echo. What they feel isn't just regret, it's withdrawal. The same way the brain craves dopamine from a substance, it also craves the emotional stimulation of control, of predictability, of attention. So when you remove yourself, it creates the same kind of psychological craving, except now, you're not around to satisfy it. That's what makes this so powerful. You didn't have to burn bridges. You didn't have to prove anything. All you had to do was return to your center and stop making yourself so easily available. And just like that, you became a mystery in someone else's narrative. And mysteries are far harder to forget than people. Becoming unattainable isn't just about how others see you. It's about how you begin to see yourself. There comes a moment when you no longer operate from wounds, but from awareness. When your energy is no longer scattered across 1,000 interactions, explanations, and justifications, but instead held close, protected, directed with intention. And this internal shift doesn't just change your relationships, it changes your entire life. See, most people are afraid to be misunderstood. They think silence makes them invisible. That detachment means they'll be forgotten. But the truth is, silence creates space, and in that space, your presence starts to grow louder. Not to others first, but to you. You start noticing things. Where your energy leaks, who you shrink for, what triggers your anxiety. And suddenly, being unavailable isn't about ignoring people. It's about refusing to abandon yourself. There's power in no longer explaining why you're distant, why you've changed, or why your circle got smaller. You stop needing to justify boundaries that are meant to protect your peace. You stop feeling guilty for not showing up in spaces that drain you. And instead of focusing on who's watching you pull away, you begin focusing on how it feels to finally come home to yourself. Psychologically, this shift is massive because it changes your internal reward system. Most people are trained to get their emotional hits externally. Likes, praise, attention, replies. But once you start finding those rewards internally, calm, clarity, groundedness, you literally rewire the brain. You stop chasing adrenaline and start craving stillness. And that stillness becomes addictive in the best way possible. You notice your reactions slowing down. You're not jumping to respond, not racing to defend yourself, not bending to be understood. That inner stillness becomes your home base. And from there, your perception sharpens. You spot red flags faster. You see manipulation before it wraps itself in charm. You hear your intuition more clearly. Because your energy isn't being scattered by trying to be available for everyone. It's being anchored by showing up fully for yourself. That's the moment when people begin to truly feel your absence. Not because you left loudly, but because you were once everywhere, and now you're nowhere. And that vacuum, that space where you used to give your energy away for free, that space becomes sacred. And what most people don't expect is that once you become unattainable, you don't feel lonely. You feel free. There's a certain clarity that only comes once you've stepped back far enough to see the patterns. And when you do, it hits you. You were never the weak one for caring. You were just too available for people who weren't ready to receive you. This realization isn't just freeing, it's transformative. Because once you understand that your worth isn't tied to how much you give or how much you're seen, you begin operating from a completely different energy. You no longer fear losing people. You no longer feel guilty for not answering right away. You stop feeling the pressure to explain why you're focused on yourself. And that shift, it ripples through everything. You begin to walk differently, speak slower, think clearer. You become less reactive, more intentional. People feel the difference in your energy before they even realize what changed. And it's not something you can fake. It's not about pretending to be mysterious or confident. It's about actually being rooted in who you are, with or without applause. And here's the irony. Once you genuinely stop caring about being chosen, you become the one people seek out. Not because you need them, but because you don't. Detachment, when done from a place of inner peace, not ego, is magnetic. Not because it plays hard to get, but because it radiates wholeness. It says, I'm already enough, whether you stay or go. That's the energy people can't forget. And it doesn't just change how people treat you, it changes how you move through the world. You stop chasing clarity from others because you've created it within. You stop hoping someone will choose you because you've already chosen yourself. And once you get used to living like that, unbothered, focused, grounded, you'll wonder how you ever tolerated the noise. So, no, being unattainable isn't about being cold. It's about being complete. It's about protecting your energy like it's gold, because it is. It's about knowing that not everyone deserves access to you. And once you truly believe that, you'll notice something beautiful. Your peace starts to grow, your clarity sharpens, and your path begins to unfold without force. And as that happens, people will notice. They may not say it, but they'll feel it. You've changed. And this time, you're not changing back. Here's the part no one tells you. Once you step into this new version of yourself, calm, grounded, unattached, you start losing interest in the old ways of being, the overexplaining, the overthinking, the trying too hard phase. It doesn't even tempt you anymore, because peace is addictive. And the more you protect it, the more you realize how expensive it was to give your energy to the wrong things. You begin choosing silence over proving your point, solitude over shallow conversations, and intention over urgency. Your energy no longer bends to fill gaps in other people's stories. You hold it close. You use it wisely. And the moment someone senses they can no longer access it so easily, they start feeling the shift, not just emotionally, but energetically. You become someone who walks into a room and doesn't need to speak to be felt, someone who doesn't need validation to know they're valuable, and someone who, without saying a word, teaches others how to treat them, simply by how they treat themselves. And the best part, you're no longer afraid to be misunderstood. You don't need to correct every misjudgment or explain your silence, because you're not living to be understood. You're living to be aligned with your peace, your path, your power. If anything in this video spoke to you, take a second to reflect on this. What's one version of yourself you're finally ready to let go of? Drop it in the comments. Let it be your declaration, your quiet revolution. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away without looking back. And if you're ready to keep showing up for yourself and protecting your energy like it actually matters, hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around. This is your space now, and we're only just getting started.